YouTube, and welcome back to another video. Today we are finally going over my top 5 favorite books of 2024. So grab your coffee or your tea or water and get cozy because we are going to have a book talk for the end of 2024. I am super excited for this. If there's something I probably like a little bit more than reading books, it's actually talking about books. So we're going to have our little rambling session where I'm going to explain to you why these are my top 5. We're going to be ranking them from 5th place to 1st place. So number 1 is going to be my all-time favorite book of this year. It might be a very random pick, to be honest with you, but you will be the judge of that, and in the end, comment below which was your 2024 number 1 book. That way I can add it to my to be read pile because I am looking for good books for next year. So let's see. This 2024, I have read 26 books. And yes, it's not that many, but as a disclosure, I'm not a fast reader. I'm not typical reading 3 books in a week type of girl. I have things to do. I have work and other stuff. So I don't read that fast and not that much. But I feel like 26 books in the year was not horribly bad. And by the way, I am also coming up with a list of my 5 least favorite books of 2024. And this is going to be kind of like I read them so you don't have to read them type of thing, because I wouldn't want anyone wasting their time with such bad books, because not every literature out there is good, believe it or not. So definitely make sure you keep an eye out for that video, which is coming up probably next week. But for now, without further ado, let's get into my list of my top 5 books of 2024. First in line, it's the Acadia duology. And number 1, yes, I'm probably mispronouncing that. Number 2, yes, I'm also cheating by including 2 books into the rank of 5th place. I actually have the second one here with me, which is called Finding Eden, and the first book is called Becoming Calder. This was a very random pick at an outlet store. I think it was during the middle of the year that I found it, and I started reading it when I realized, like, wait, this is part of a series. And I googled it and I found that it in fact had a first book, which again is the one Becoming Calder. So I had to download it in my iPad to read it. So I don't have the physical copy, which I probably should get it. I'm not gonna spoil it for you. I'm just gonna say it was a very sweet and tender love story. If I had to describe this duology in a phrase, I would say it became my guilty pleasure, because it's not the best written book out there. It's like your commercial type book, I feel like, but it's not at the low level like Colleen Hoover's books are. Because yes, disclaimer, if you didn't know, I don't particularly love her writing or her literature. I don't think it should have as much hype as it does, but this one actually was really good. Compared to those books, I would prefer something like this. I do recommend reading these ones because they are like very easy literature. The story is very intriguing, like the storyline. I haven't really read something that similar to these, and of course the ending was super perfect, and I thought they were gonna ruin it with the second book because I liked the first one a lot, but then the second one had like so much desperation on it, and the ending again was really satisfying. It's my number 5 because it was very intriguing, very easy to read, and it made you feel stuff that was really refreshing. But it's on the 5th place because I don't think it's like professionally written like a Christine Hanna book or something like that. It's just like a contemporary piece of writing, but I would for sure recommend it. And in 4th place, we have Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. I was in a very big slump at the beginning of the year, not finding new books to read, just because I felt everything was the same. I had been reading books like, again, Colleen Hoover, which they were not that good, and I felt like I was just wasting time. So I ended up rereading a lot of books I had read before, which wasn't bad, but I felt like, wow, nowadays nobody writes stuff as good as what I used to read when I was younger, right? Until I came across Things We Never Got Over. I don't remember. I think I saw one of my friends reading it, and then I downloaded the copy into my iPad, and then my best friend just gave me this one for my birthday and the sequel, because it's actually 3 books. I didn't even know this when I started reading it, and I finished it, and I actually thought it had a good ending. I am going to finish reading the series throughout this month, but I feel like you could just read this one and it's good enough. It was a very refreshing piece of news because it does have its weird stuff. Again, nowadays you cannot find a book without it, unfortunately, because I don't see the appeal to those weird parts, but it is like a romantic comedy. The characters have such personalities that you can basically, feel like you're there with them. You can actually picture them in your head as to how real Lucy Score describes them. The main character is very relatable, at least to me. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it was very refreshing. And as you can tell, it's like very thick. The other ones are as big as this one, but you go through them in a breeze. I've been reading for like 2 days, and it's very easy to read. The literature, it's very contemporary, so it actually refers to actual things that might be happening, or just like relatable things from nowadays. It's not like a classic, but it's just, again, super fun to read. I have laughed and cried with it because I don't know, it's really cute. And the ending is super great. I haven't read the other two books, so I cannot speak for them, but for sure this is my number fourth because it kind of revived in me that passion for reading these type of books. Totally recommend this one too. And in place number three, we have Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. And yes, we are getting into a deeper territory here because this book for sure it's nothing at all like the other two that I just showed you guys. It is number three because it's obviously a masterpiece. It's not like a thriller, right? It is a classic, again, C.S. Lewis, but we can all agree that C.S. Lewis is the master of them all. The only books I have read from him were actually like The Chronicles of Narnia, which I've read like 3 times, and then The Great Divorce, the classics. But this one I hadn't really heard of, and I randomly found it in a book fair, and I got it. It's like the retold mythology of Cupid and Psyche, which is so interesting because there's even a note of his inside here explaining why he wrote it the way he wrote it, because there's a lot of people that have retold the same story, but they have given it different endings or different perspectives, and the one which he chose, it's just like insane. The end of this book is going to blow your mind away. I'm not going to spoil it or even say what it's about. Of course, it's mythology, but it has so much more behind it. The setting is incredible, and it was so sad. It was so sad. I cried so much when I finished it. I know it's a mess to explain, but you guys have to read this one. It's pretty short, and for it to be a classic, it's honestly not that slow. I'm not gonna say it's a page turner, but it gets very intriguing. So yes, I totally recommend reading Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. Alright, you guys, we're getting close to the end of our list, but first we have to go with second place. And second place goes to the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros. And yes, I probably mispronounced all of that, and once again I'm cheating by including more than one book in this category, but guys, oh my goodness, my ear totally picked up after I read this. Like, I feel I read this one and then I started finding amazing books to read based off recommendations from this one. It was such a refreshing perspective to finally read an author that knows what she's doing because lately I have been bombarded with authors that, I don't know, they just don't cut it. Like, they were good, but it's not the same feeling that I would have liked to have. Like, you guys remember when Hunger Games had just come out and we were reading the trilogy and we were like minds blown and we wanted to be the main character, or when Divergent came out, or even Maze Runner, which I personally really liked contrary to public opinion, and all of those sci-fi books, and we were like, what on earth is this? Like, they were on a roll and they were so good, and suddenly they stopped, and I hadn't read anything as good as those books until I read the Empyrean series. And get this, the last book hasn't even been released. I think it's released until January or something. But oh my goodness, my friend lent me Fourth Wing, which is the first one, and I was reading it and I was almost crying with happiness that something like this exists, because it is a combination of pretty much all those great books I mentioned before, all those great series. Throw in Game of Thrones a little bit because it does have dragons in it. I say sci-fi, but it's rather like fantasy as well. It's such a mixture. There are a lot of characters. They are very well explained, just like Lucy Score. I think it's really easy to just close your eyes and picture each one of these characters. The writing super fast paced, very easy to catch up with, very witty characters. Iron Flame was also as good as Fourth Wing. I felt it was a tiny bit slower in certain parts of it, but I rather have that sometimes when they explain the whole story and don't leave you hanging. And well, I don't even want to think about how it's gonna end because I know my heart is gonna be shattered. It was already shattered with book number 1, but still, I really recommend it. If you have not read it, you have to read it. I don't have it physically with me, as you can tell, and I'm certainly going to be reading that in my new Kindle because I want to reread them before I read the last one. That's how good they are. You know when a book is good, when you want to read it more than one time. So the Empyrean series, highly recommend, and that is second place on my list. Now, for the moment we have all been waiting for. I did debate and I did do a whole lot of math to think what was gonna be my number 1 book this year. And to be honest, it's a very controversial one. Compared to the ones I just shared with you guys, it's very different. A couple of things. I didn't really categorize my top 5 into genres or topics, so all of them are very varied. For example, C.S. Lewis you cannot compare with Lucy Score. All of them have different writing styles, definitely different topics, but this one, it's totally another topic from the ones I shared with you guys. And I know I'm building suspense in here, but here is the catch. My first place in 2024 literature, it's not a book I would recommend to you guys. It's a book that changed my whole brain chemistry when I read it and finished it. I promise you, I have not been the same person. And that sounds kind of weird and bad if it's not a book like the Bible that should be changing you, but that's how good this piece of literature was, right? I'm not really highlighting the story itself, but how it was written, it was insane. And without further ado, first place for 2024 goes to A Little Life by Hania. And I'm sorry, I'm not gonna try to pronounce her last name because I can't. Yes, this one, you guys. If that cover seems miserable, it does not even scratch the surface of how miserable this book was. It is the definition of desperation, depression, sadness, heartache, and everything along those lines that you can think of. There is nothing in this book that is happy, because even the happy memories later on turn into the most heart-shattering ones. As you can see here, I have highlighted several parts of it because I don't think I can go back and read this again. I don't want to say never, but I think I'll never read these again, because there's no reason why I should put myself through it. But those pages in there are very important to me. I don't want to spoil it for you guys, so I'm not really gonna tell you much other than a few warnings, right? That it talks about homosexuality a lot in it, and I know just with that you'll be like, how is that number 1? But you have to read it to know. The whole book kind of keeps hidden the story of the main character because he doesn't want to share it, and you are like dying for him to share it the whole book, but then when he finally shares it, you really wish he hadn't. Like, really wish he hadn't. So you guys, I'm not gonna recommend that you read this one. You read it, it's at your own risk. Believe me, you'll never be the same again. I don't even have good enough words to explain what this book did to me or what it felt like. I just think that for it to be a fiction book, it is too realistic, but it's so real. It's so real. Like, she was not lying. That really happens, and that's what made it so astounding. That's what made me really change my train of thought for a lot of things and see people, because you like never really get to know what's going on in their lives, and this book really invaded their privacy. That's also kind of like another reason why I wouldn't really read it again, because it felt that personal. But yeah, that is the big first place. I think that she definitely earned it to have written a masterpiece like this. All my other books were so much more enjoyable, and I had a really fun time with them. They were entertainment, and this one just got out of that category. Well, you guys, I believe it has been enough rambling for one video. I bet you can agree with me on that. I hope this was an intriguing top 5 for you this year. I have seen some videos around and they are very interesting to watch. And definitely don't forget to stick around for my next one, because if this one was kind of interesting, next one is going to be even more interesting, because I'm going to burn down some unpopular opinions. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to be rude to anyone, but I will write down my top 5 least favorite books from this year, the ones that you definitely don't want to waste your time with. So stay tuned for that, and definitely don't forget to comment below which was your number 1 for this year, and if you have read any of the ones that I read, and if you think my rankings were accurate or why they were not accurate. Leave all of that in the comments. I hope we can have a good chat about it, guys. Thank you for following along, and I hope to see you in my next video. Goodbye.